Elias Calloway was 41 years old, and in 19 years of building other people's futures, he had never once missed a deadline he had given his word on. He drove a 2009 pickup with just past 190,000 miles on it, and a dented thermos wedged in the console that he filled at 5:40 every morning. On the second Saturday of October, he stood at the front of a church in a pressed gray suit and waited for a woman named Camille to walk through a door she had already decided not to walk through. She had chosen someone else. A man with more money, she said. A bigger life. She left him standing there in front of 140 people, and she did it cleanly, and she was gone before the flowers had been cleared. What she did not know, what nobody in that church knew, was that the richer man she had left him for would report to Elias's job site at 7 the next morning, hard hat in hand, expecting to meet his new boss. And she did not know what she had already done with the money. Before we go any further, drop a comment letting us know where in the world you're watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. The yard on Kessler Avenue was never quiet at that hour. Compressors cycling, a generator somewhere behind the office, the first trucks rolling in over gravel. Elias had built the company that owned that yard one contract at a time, starting with a single crew and a borrowed cement mixer, until the sign at the gate read Meridian Development and the name underneath it, in smaller letters, was his own. He had never bothered to make that fact loud. He wore the same canvas jacket he had worn as a foreman, drove the same truck, poured his coffee from the same dented thermos. The men on his sites called him Eli. Most of them had no idea the payroll came out of an account with his signature on it. That was how he liked it. He was the kind of man who showed up early, said what he would do, and did it, and then said nothing about having done it. When Camille's staging business needed a warehouse 2 winters back, he co-signed the lease and covered 4 months of rent she never fully paid back. And he did it without once mentioning the figure. She took it the way she took most things he gave her, as weather, as something that simply arrived. He had told himself that was fine. He had told himself she would understand the whole of it eventually, what he had built, what it was worth, what it meant that he had chosen her to build the rest of it with. He never got the chance to show her. Then came the second Saturday in October, and everything that followed came from there. The room behind the sanctuary was small and too warm, the kind of warm that comes from a radiator no one can find the valve for. Elias was standing at the window with his jacket off when the door opened. Camille came in already dressed for leaving, not for a wedding. She had on the gray coat she wore to client meetings, not the dress. Her hair was down. She had brought a folder, and her ring was not on her hand. "I've thought about this more carefully than you'll believe," she said. "And I owe it to myself to be honest with you before you hear it from someone else." Elias did not say anything. He looked at her, and he waited. "I've met someone who's already where you're still trying to get," she said. "Marcus doesn't make me wait for the life I want. He's building something real, Elias, right now. Not someday." She set the folder on the small table between them. "I need more than someday." There it was. She was leaving him at the altar with 140 people in the pews for a man she believed had more. He did not raise his voice. He did not ask who Marcus was. He did not ask her to reconsider, or point out the 140 people, or say a single one of the things a man is supposed to say in that room. He looked at the folder. Then he looked at her. Then he set his coffee down on the sill, slowly. The way you set down something you do not want to spill. She kept talking. She said the word Meridian once. He just took a senior role at a development group, Meridian, They're expanding fast, and Elias registered it the way he registered a load number that did not match the plan. Without alarm. Without a word. He filed it and let his face stay exactly where it was. "I'm sorry you're finding out this way," she said. "But I'd be lying to both of us if I stayed. I deserve to reach for more." She left the ring on the table beside the folder. She said she would handle the house paperwork, since she had been managing that anyway. Then she went out the side door, and Elias heard her heels on the concrete steps. And then the parking lot took the sound. He did not follow her. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. He folded it over his arm. He walked out through the side door into the October cold, and he got into his truck, and he sat there for a while with both hands on the wheel. Then he drove. He would figure out the rest later. He went to work the next morning because that was the only thing he knew how to do with a morning. He was in the site trailer on Kessler by 6:40, thermos-filled, when the new project manager arrived for his first day. The man came in confident. Hand out. A leased Range Rover parked crooked across 2 spaces behind him. "Marcus Renner," he said. "I'm the new PM on the Halstead job. They told me to check in with." And then he read the name on the door of the inner office, and then he looked at the man standing behind the desk, and the rest of the sentence did not come. Elias let the silence sit for exactly as long as it needed to. Then he shook the offered hand, because the offered hand was still out, and because the men on the floor were watching. "Calloway," he said. "You're on Halstead. We start at 7. That was all. He had a company to run. Marcus had a badge to pick up, and somewhere across town, Camille believed she had gotten away clean. What Camille had never taken the time to understand was how the man she had just left had built the things she thought she was trading up from. 3 years earlier, before the ring, before the warehouse, Elias had spent a full summer rebuilding the back half of her mother's house after a pipe let go behind a wall and rotted 2 rooms down to the studs. He did it on weekends, after full weeks on his own sites. 11 Saturdays. He tore out the ruined joists himself, hauled them to the dumpster himself, framed the new floor and set the subfloor, and hung the drywall and did the finish work, and he never sent an invoice, and he never mentioned what the materials had run him. Camille told her mother he was handy. She said it like it was a small thing. He let it be a small thing, because that was the man he was. He had noticed, over the last year, that her attention had developed a kind of delay. She answered a beat late. She kept her phone face down at dinner in a way she had not before. She started describing their future using the word eventually, and then stopped describing it at all. He had seen all of it. He had chosen to read it as wedding stress, as the ordinary friction of 2 busy people, because he believed in what they were building, and a man does not tear open a wall on a hunch. He extended her the benefit of every doubt, one after another, the way he extended credit to a subcontractor he wanted to keep. His foreman, a man named Dell, who had been with him 17 years, had said something once in the yard, watching Camille pull away in the car Elias had helped her buy. "That one keeps a running total," Dell said. "Make sure you're not the only one she's charging." Elias had laughed it off at the time. He did not hold on to it. Camille had spent 2 years standing on the edge of something and never once looked down to see what was holding it up. That was the part she had stopped paying attention to long before she ever walked into that warm little room and set the ring on the table. Her name was Ruth Vance, and she had kept the books at Meridian for 22 years. She was small and precise, with silver hair she kept short, and a habit of reading a ledger the way other people read a face. She had watched Camille come through the office for 3 years, and she had watched the way Camille's eyes moved over the furniture and the parking lot, and the account statements Elias sometimes left on his desk. Ruth had not said anything, not because she had not seen it, but because she had been waiting for the day Elias would be able to hear it. 9 days after the wedding that did not happen, she decided that day had come. She came into his office in the early evening, after the crews had gone, with a folder she had clearly been building for a long time, and a cup of coffee. She sat down in front of him first. "I'm going to lay this out in order," she said. "I need you to let me get all the way through it before you say anything." Elias sat down. He nodded. Ruth opened the folder. The first pages were her own dated notes, going back 14 months. A pattern of withdrawals from the joint household account he had set up with Camille for the wedding and the house. Small at first, then not small. A charge for a warehouse lease Elias thought had been paid off. A vehicle he did not recognize, a black sedan, showing up on the security footage at the yard on days Elias was out of town, parked in the visitor space for an hour at a stretch. Elias looked at the timestamp on one of those photos. He remembered the day. He remembered Camille saying the word meridian in a warm room. He said nothing. "There's more," Ruth said. She turned the page. In August, while Elias was in Denver for 11 days closing the Halstead financing, someone had used the power of attorney Camille, had asked him to sign just for the house closing, in case it happens while you're traveling. She had used it once. She had moved $214,000 out of his personal holding account and into a business account he had never heard of. Elias was quiet for a moment. He turned his coffee cup a quarter turn on the desk, the way he did. "Which account?" he said. Not loud, just a question. "That," Ruth said, "is the part you need to see." The account belonged to an LLC called Vantage Renner Holdings. It had been registered in March, 7 months before the wedding. 2 names sat on the formation documents: Camille Foster and Marcus Renner. The $214,000 had gone in as startup capital for a property flip the two of them had been planning since the spring. A flip that needed exactly that much to close. A flip whose entire down payment had come, without his knowledge or his signature, out of the money Elias had spent 19 years earning. He stood up. He moved around to the other side of the desk so he could look at all of it laid out at once. The notes, the photos, the transfer record, the LLC filing, the dates lined up in a row. He did not pick any single page up. He read the whole thing the way he read a set of plans, letting his eye travel the connections instead of the parts. And the structure of it came clear the way a framing plan comes clear once you stop staring at any one joist. March, the LLC. Spring and summer, the sedan, the withdrawals, the quiet delay in her attention. August, the transfer, while he was 3 states away signing his name to keep 6 crews working. October, the room, the ring, the folder, the word meridian said out loud to a man she was certain did not understand what he was standing on. He could see every line, where each one started, where it led, who it fed. "She thought she'd taken something from me," he said finally. "She took it into a company with my new project manager's name on it." Ruth refilled his coffee. She did not say anything. She did not need to. He did not act immediately. He had learned a long time ago that the fastest way to lose a complicated job was to start swinging before the layout was confirmed. So, he confirmed the layout. His attorney was a man named Dennis Price, who had done Meridian's contract work for a decade, and who worked at hours no reasonable person kept. Ruth had called him the same night she opened the folder, before she had even shown it to Elias, so that by the time Elias picked up the phone, Dennis had already pulled the LLC filing and the transfer record and found the thing that mattered most: The power of attorney had been executed for one narrow purpose, a residential closing, and used for something else entirely. That's not a gray area, Dennis said at 6:15 in the morning, because 6:15 was when he had something worth saying. That's the whole case. Then Dennis brought in a forensic accountant named Grace Lynn, who moved through a set of bank records the way Elias moved through a materials list. One line confirmed, then the next. No feeling attached until the feeling was earned. What she surfaced was worse than Ruth's notes had shown. The $214,000 had not gone straight into the flip. It had moved twice, first through a second account in 2 installments dated 3 days apart, the kind of routing people use when they are trying to make a straight line look like a coincidence. Grace flagged both dates. She flagged the second signatory. She built a timeline that started in March and did not have a single innocent explanation anywhere on it. Camille called on a Thursday. Elias let it reach voicemail. Her first message was smooth, rehearsed. She had heard he had people looking into things, and she wanted him to know she thought that was beneath him, that they could handle this like adults. Her second message came the next day, and the composure had a crack running through it now. She mentioned her attorney. She mentioned that Marcus was under a lot of pressure at work, as if Elias might not know precisely how much, as if Elias were not the pressure. He listened to both messages one time each. He noted the change in her voice, the way he would note a hairline crack in a beam, not with satisfaction, just with attention. Then, he set the phone down. This was the thing Camille had never managed to account for. She had spent 2 years deciding what kind of man she had chosen, and she had gotten the one important thing wrong. She had read his patience as the ceiling of what he was capable of. It was not the ceiling. It was the foundation. Patience was the single skill he had spent his whole working life pouring, layer over layer, until it could carry any weight you set on it. She had just never had a reason to watch him stand on it. When the file was complete, he called her himself. His voice was level, easy, cooperative. He said he did not want this dragging through a courtroom for a year. He suggested they sit down with the lawyers and settle it clean. She agreed before he had finished the sentence. He could hear the relief moving under her words, the sound of someone who believes the hard part is behind them. He gave her a date and a place. He ended the call. Dennis was across the desk, watching him. "She thinks it's already resolved," Elias said. Dennis did not answer. He set down his pen and reached for the folder. And the two of them started at the top of the first page again. Elias reached the building 20 minutes before anyone was expected. He preferred it that way. The conference room was on the 14th floor, glass on 2 sides, the city laid out flat and gray under a low November sky. It was cold in the way those rooms are always cold, a thermostat set to signal that this was not a friendly meeting. Long table. Water glasses no one would drink from. The kind of stillness a room holds when everyone coming to it has agreed, in advance, to be direct. Dennis arrived at 9, followed by Grace, who set her files down on one side of the table and squared them without hurry. There was no urgency in the room. There was only the particular quiet of people who had already done the work and had nothing left to do but present it. Camille came in with Marcus, which surprised no one, and with an attorney who looked like he had been told this was a routine negotiation. She entered the way she did everything, as though the outcome had been settled somewhere else and she was simply arriving to collect it. She looked at Elias once, a brief professional nod, and then turned her attention to Dennis, as if Elias were a party to the proceedings rather than the reason for them. "Before we discuss any terms," Dennis said, "there are several matters that need to be acknowledged by everyone at this table." He opened his folder and began setting documents down, one at a time, at the unhurried pace of a man who has done this before and is not nervous about any part of it. While Mr. Calloway was in Denver in August, Dennis said, a power of attorney he had signed for a specific residential closing was used to move funds from his personal holding account. The amount was $214,000. He let the number sit in the cold air. It was not authorized for that purpose. A civil action was filed on Tuesday. Camille's attorney looked up. Grace placed the next set of pages down and walked the room through them without a trace of drama. The transfer out of Elias's account, the 2 installments 3 days apart, the second account they had passed through, and the account where the money had finally come to rest. The receiving entity, she said, is Vantage Renner Holdings. Registered in March. 2 signatories. She named them. She did not look up when she named the second one. Camille's expression did not move. But the effort it took to keep it from moving had become visible to anyone paying attention. And Elias was paying attention. Across the table, Marcus had gone very still, and the confidence he had carried into a job site trailer 3 weeks earlier was nowhere on his face now. I want to be precise about what we're presenting and what we're not, Dennis said. We are not making representations here about criminal exposure. What we are doing is establishing that this documentation exists, that it is preserved, and that it forms part of the record from this point forward. Your counsel will want time to review it. Camille's attorney had stopped taking notes. The ease he had walked in with had left his face entirely. The room went quiet. Elias counted it. 9 seconds. 10. 11. The silence of a plan meeting the thing it had failed to account for. We'll allow time for review, Dennis said. Elias stood. He took nothing from the table. He had brought a single folder, and it had done its work. He buttoned his jacket. He shook Dennis's hand. He walked toward the door. Then he stopped, and he turned, and he said the only thing he said to her the entire meeting. Not loud, not for the room. For her, specifically, because it was only ever meant for her. You went looking for a richer man, Camille. He held her eyes for a moment. You just never once asked what I was standing on. He walked out. He did not look back. It did not unravel in a single week. The $214,000 was frozen inside a month, and without it the flip that Vantage Renner Holdings had been built to close fell through. And the earnest money went with it. Marcus, who had projected a great deal and owned very little of it, could not carry the least life he had been driving around in once the one deal he was counting on collapsed. He left the Halstead job before it topped out. The pressure Camille had mentioned in a voicemail turned out to be the entire structure of him. The staging business Camille ran had always leaned on Elias's name and Elias's network for its referrals. And those doors, without anyone ever being told to close them, simply stopped opening. She was carrying the full weight of what she had chosen, and it did not announce itself. It was just there, every day, the way a load you cannot set down is there. Elias, for his part, was building. Without hurry. The way he built everything. Meridian broke ground on the Halstead job that winter, and 2 more the following spring. His name went onto contracts with a scope that would have surprised the man who had started with a borrowed cement mixer. He had 51 people on payroll by March, a 52nd starting in April. He answered every message the same day he got it. He gave timelines, and he hit them. 14 months after the conference room, Meridian moved into a new office on the north end of the yard, a real building instead of a trailer, with Elias's name on the deed and in smaller letters underneath, the year he founded the company. On his first morning in the new office, before anyone else arrived, he hung one thing on the wall himself. It was the very first permit he had ever pulled, 19 years earlier, for a garage addition on a house on the east side, laminated and gone amber at the edges. He had kept it in a drawer that whole time. He took a level off his own truck to hang it, because he was not going to put it up crooked, and he ran his thumb once along the bottom edge to settle it, and then he stepped back and left it there, where he could see it from his desk. On a cold, clear morning in early December, Elias got to the yard before the crews. He unlocked the new office, filled the coffee maker, and stood for a minute at the window with the dented thermos in his hand, out of pure habit, watching the first trucks come in over the gravel. The Kessler yard was doing what it always did at that hour: compressors starting up. A generator somewhere behind the building, Dell's voice carrying across the lot, telling somebody the same thing he had been telling people for 17 years. Marcus's leased Range Rover was long gone from the visitor space. Camille's black sedan had never come back. Nothing about the morning was urgent. A year before, a woman had stood in a warm room and told him she was leaving to reach for more, certain she knew exactly what she was walking away from. Elias finished his coffee. His name was on the door. He unlocked it, and he went in. And he got to work. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've got 2 more picked out that I think you'll really enjoy.